Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Journey of You podcast. We have an extra special episode. We have the beloved Felicia Wong here with us, and you're going to be seeing more of her often because she's going to be joining us as a co-host for the Journey of You podcast. And so what a treat to have you here, Felicia, and for your energy to come into our cosmic pot of joy.
Yay, thank you for having
Yay.
me and
Of
including
course.
me in this wonderful, wonderful endeavor.
Of course, yeah. And it's only natural that you would because naturally ideas came out of you to add to our theme of joy. And one of them, you guys, is today's theme. And today's theme is holding back from joy. And the truth be told is that we can hold ourselves back from joy, right? I think we all have had some experience of that. And we're going to dive deeper today about some of our experiences and also dive deep into you about how you may be holding back from your joy very, very much so right now. But really, the whole theme and premise of this really is that when we're holding back from our joy or hiding from our joy is that we're hiding from our greatness. We're hiding from this inherent joy that life has to offer us, and so we're basically limiting our potential of our life and existence. Welcome back to another episode of Joy, the Journey of You podcast. We're your hosts, Devin and Chris, and we're here for joy.
This podcast is your permission slip to reconnect to your inherent joy and to embrace it.
Let's fill up the cosmic joy pot together as we dive in to today's episode. And so we're going to go a little bit into how this applies into things, but I'd love to just get everybody's energy in here to share about just this premise of holding back from our joy.
Yeah, I just totally agree with what you said, obviously. And I want to add that we are often not even aware of how we're holding back from joy because sometimes it is such a small thing and it keeps us safe, right? We'll go into that a bit further on, but it's so subtle that we are not aware of it and we're not aware of the joy we're missing out. Sometimes it's very obvious, but sometimes it's just these tiny little things. And when we look back, we're like, oh my God, what did I do there? What did I co-create? What did I hold back from? Right.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
And so subconsciously,
Mm.
like it's so deeply ingrained in the programming from the past that it's like you said, all these small moments that really add up and even something as simple as like sending a text and wondering, oh, would I have said something differently? Or I'm fearful how they're going to respond, or I'm not going to say what I fully mean because I don't want them to respond in a certain way.
Mhm.
Simple
Absolutely.
things and big things.
I mean, that's such a great example of like, even if you hold back from like reaching out to a friend, it's like you can miss again, but you might not know that you're missing out on the opportunity to connect and have an awesome, awesome time. But it can be small little things. So I love that you're bringing that essence into it. Yeah. And so truth be told, you guys, is that when we are focused on connecting to our joy and we stand in the truth of ourselves and we come out of the shadows and realize that we are blocking ourselves, that's when more joy comes. It's like joy brings more joy, but we have to connect to that joy and to come out of the shadows of some of those illusions and unconscious habits, if you will, to be able to consciously come into choosing joy and leaning more toward, like out of the shadows, leaning more towards joy. And so that is when we are applying this premise positively.
Mm. And it's like when we dare to share our greatness, when we dare to be in our genius, and that's just scary to our egos, and that's why we kind of like dim down that light, and by dimming down the light, we also dim down the joy, right? And when we dare to connect to our greatness and to express it, then the joy comes.
What's actually coming up for me right now is thinking about the cosmic joy pot,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we have our own personal containers. And sometimes as we allow the joy to come in, our container's like, oh no, you're not ready for that expansion yet. And then we have to lean in to really allow it to expand and then come back out.
Mm.
Yeah. But each layer might bring in some more resistance and we
Yes.
keep moving into it.
Well, I mean, that just speaks to a really good point is that this is not like a one and done thing of like, oh, I choose joy and I have joy for the rest of my life, right? Like it's It's very
Unfortunately,
much
we're human, right?
exactly. So it is a very much an evolution in stages, right? And truth be told is there's going to be multiple points in our lives where we're being asked, we're being called out from the shadows into the light of ourselves. And when we're living in the shadows, identify with those shadows, we're absolutely going to want to hold back on that joy, right? Because it's this perception in the shadows of like, this is what's available to me. And so it's like when that invitation for expansion comes, if we're identified with basically like the amount of joy we can handle, kind of, right? Is it's like if we're
Mhm.
really in that, we can have a perception of being like, I mean, I'm fine here, everything's good. Like, I don't really need that much more joy, right? Like, if it means being uncomfortable, I'm good. And that's where we can very subversely and kind of trickily this is all unconscious because if you aren't aware of this stuff, this is just running in the background. Is that those are definitely ways that we can be holding back from joy pretty consistently, actually, in each of those time frames of like, oh no, let me come back. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, and the interesting thing is that like I feel our egos will use this situation, like it will let us know that we're back in square one when we feel we hit this
Mhm.
resistance again. We're back in square one. We get to
Mm,
start from square one, and it's useless to even try to expand our container
mm,
because we're back in square one in a week again anyway. So why even go there?
mm,
Why even be discomfortable, right? And
mm.
so it's like it's really circling the drain. But to me, what happens when we expand like this, I don't know if I shared that example before, but it's like in a parking garage that has several decks. You know, you start in the parking spot 101, but then you level up, then you're in 201, and then you level up and you're in 301, and you're always in the spot 01, but you've up leveled, right? Your container has grown and you're able to hold so much more, right? But to your ego, it'll be like, yeah, but we're in spot one.
And I haven't done any work and I've gone nowhere.
Exactly.
That happens a lot.
Or I have done so much work and I've gotten nowhere.
Oh,
Totally.
same, like two sides of the same coin. It's,
Hmm.
yeah.
But what I'm finding is fascinating about this is how it's so universal. Like just this last week, I was having this internal dialogue of basically as my book was coming out last week, is like my ego was totally like, okay, so we've done all this. This feels a little anticlimactic, right?
Yeah.
Like I was just a little bit like not wanting to soak up the joy and the celebration of my book being complete, and really just from my ego's point of view, the part of me that did not want to lean into joy, wanted to hold back the joy of just being like it's interesting because as I sit with you guys in this now, it was like it's all too much, actually, is kind of what my ego is saying. Like, this is all really great and everything, but like I can't deal with
Hold
that
that.
much joy. It's
Yep.
like many times my ego will say it's like drinking from a fire hydrant. It's
Hmm.
all too much. But it does have this mix of what you were both saying, of this mix of like, well, I've done so much, so why is it even worth it? But also, have I done enough? And that why it feels anticlimactic. And it basically just wants to keep me in a place of just not being in the joy of the moment, right? It's taking
Mm-hmm.
me away from that present moment to soak up the joy of the celebration and of sharing it with other people, and even just looking at the book and saying it's beautiful and just being like, I did that, right? It's absolutely amazing to me as we were sharing is the universality of these dialogues within us as humans,
Mm.
but I definitely have been experiencing that lately.
Lady, me too, me too.
Lady.
I had a very funny experience with this because, see, the thing is that sometimes we're aware of how we're holding ourselves back, right? But sometimes we are like our egos are such clever co-creators that we can blame it on the world, right? So what happened to me was actually also related to the book launch, because there was this book launch party and I was on the road and I was supposed to need 1.5 hours, but the whole trip took me over 3 hours, and so I missed the book launch party, right? And and that felt so terrible. And at the same time, I was completely okay with it. And on the way, I was like, okay, so who did I become on this journey? I became the illustrator that missed the book launch party, right? And what made me listen up was that I was so okay with it. Like, what part of me was celebrating that I was actually missing out? And I was wearing this invisibility cloak. So, like, I didn't even show up to the party. I was not even seen. I was like, I'm not even there, right? And I'm nice and safe and nobody knows. Right? And
Hmm.
I could have blamed it on the traffic, which, you know, it was real, it was there. But at the same time, I know it was myself who created this or
And
co-created it at
yet,
least.
Hmm.
that book cover, right? You helped co-create that image and you
Mm.
illustrated that. And it's so beautiful, such a beacon of light
Oh,
that needs to be seen.
thank you.
You're welcome. And it's crazy to me because, as you know, as within, so without, or as without, so within. Like,
Mm.
Hmm.
this past week, I also experienced that. Like, so as we talked about in my other episode on this podcast, I am a professional bowler. And this past week, I was competing in a week-long event in Cleveland. And how it works is it's three different events, and you qualify on one day, and if you make the cut, you get to bowl the next day. And each tournament within this week is the same. And the first two tournaments, I come out of the first block swinging. Like everything is great. I'm so joyful. Like the universe is flowing through me. Everything is passionate and it's glee. And then the second block, I just kind of, I dim my light. I shrink back to where it feels safe, back to, yes, past expectations of where I expect myself to be. And I go on to miss, what they would say, like 3-foot putts, like very simple shots. And it had that feeling that Chris was describing in the parking lot, like, oh, I've done all this work, I've come so far, and it feels like deflating almost, like my air has been let out of my sails, and I'm moving through that.
Hmm.
Yeah. So why? And this is a question that comes up for me often. Like, what
Hmm.
is it about? Like, why wouldn't everyone just be like, of course I want to experience joy. I commit to this. I want this in my life.
Yeah. Well, the first thing that comes to me is change, right? Change is very stress inducing, right? Because basically what our ego wants is stability. It just wants things to be like straight and narrow, known, expected. Like I know how it is here. Everything's hunky dory,
No,
everything's good.
even if it's not hunky dory, I know everything.
Exactly.
Even if it's shit,
Exactly.
Mm,
I know
It
it,
can be
right?
mm,
shit, but I know this shit, right?
Mm.
Like I know this shit. I'm
yeah.
comfortable with this shit. At least I know how to navigate this shit, right?
Mm.
And truth be told, is our greatness is having us change into a version of ourselves that's actually the true version of ourselves that is going to be different. And there's going to be a lot of unknown, right? And so it's in that unknown that basically ego is grabbing on to try to find that orientation of how is it here? I need to know what's going on. And so it's actually quite disorienting for the ego. That's why it starts to grab on and try to like pull
Keep
you back
small.
in.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
to
and yeah, sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I find it funny, haha, funny, how this can manifest in physical ways, in emotional ways, and spiritual ways. So with the bowling,
Mhm.
when I get in the past, when I've gotten very like myself, like I'm bowling as if I've always wanted to bowl. Sometimes physical manifestation of injury has happened.
Hmm.
So in bowling, when you bowl with one hand, it's very important to release the thumb and the fingers in a certain sequence at the right time and have that all be loose and flowy, right? And I've had some significant thumb issues in the past, blistering, tearing, this kind of thing, just as I'm starting to,
Hmm.
Mhm.
yeah. And
Absolutely.
Yeah, and this is why I just speak to it as being unconscious. And in that coaching that I do is it's when things are unconscious, they get to run the show because we aren't aware of them. That's why when Chris was saying it's like oftentimes we're not actually aware of us actually limiting our joy, and these are unconscious patterns. but it's when we start to question and when we start to actually take the unconscious to a conscious level is when we can change it. And that's really why we're doing this episode, is for anybody out there, including ourselves, that
Obviously.
is noticing right now that you're holding back from your joy, or you're resisting what you're being invited into. It's common, and it's all because of these unconscious patterns, unconscious belief systems that real time right now we're bringing up in consciousness. So then we have conscious choice of what to really be. Do we want that? Do we actually want that? Or
Mm.
is there
And I
something
want
else?
to I want to add that all these things that we shared until now, they're actually the ego trying to release creative tension. So these are all ways of how we kind of release energy. And if we know how to, or if we're conscious, if we make that choice, we can channel that energy into something we would love to create. But if we allow the ego to do its thing, it will just blow it out, right? And these can be things like, when you talk bad about somebody, that's releasing tension. When you deflect receiving compliments, that's releasing tension, or using it um in a negative way, or when you hurt yourself to not step up in your process, or all these things, and it's so natural to us that we do that, that we're not like, we don't notice that we have a choice in this,
Mm.
because we are like, it just, yeah.
Well,
And if we,
what brings that up is the compelling nature of it, right? Especially when there's a
Yes.
physical injury of some sort or an ailment. This is actually one of the most common ones, getting sick.
Sick,
But a lot of
exactly,
times
yeah.
people get sick, and it's a
Mm,
physical manifestation that's very convincing, right? Like your body's like, I actually feel like shit. This is very convincing, but it's a symptom of the
mhm.
ego and your small self wanting to stay hidden and
Small.
stay in the
Mm,
shadows. And so if people can at least start to connect that, I want more people to be able to connect that, because you usually find that there is something that's happening in your relationship with your body, as well as Felicia sharing most recently, with her thumb injury with bowling. And then for myself, right? Like I'll notice that, like, I'm so tired and I just
mhm,
like want to sleep, and it's just like I don't have it in me, right? But then when I really tune into truth, I actually do, but it's very compelling to think, I don't got it. I don't have it
mm,
in me. Yeah.
mm,
and it's so easy to overlook. And if you're not used to tuning into the truth,
mm,
right? And like that subconscious, unconscious running the show, and you have to make choices to be like, I want to commit to living differently.
Hmm.
mm,
I want to commit to experiencing the truth of our nature. And as we know, is like this underlying abundant pot of joy
mm.
Hmm.
that is always there.
Mm. And
Yeah.
it's also not just joy, it's all of the higher emotions, right? It's just joy for us now because it's the Joy podcast, obviously. But it's also bliss, it's also love, it's also like all calm, peace, all these higher emotions.
Or even
And
just contentment, right? The word
yeah.
contentment comes to me, right? Like,
Mhm,
if some people, if joy is like too high of a threshold for you right now, it's like, how
mhm,
about just contentment?
exactly,
Doesn't that?
exactly. And just like inner peace is like, wow, awesome, or satisfaction, or like any of that, right?
Mhm.
But yeah, I had a thought and I lost it.
All good. All good. But let's transition into having you, the listener, tune in and like just witness what's coming up in you as we explore this topic. So, like, specifically in your life, what are you right now in your life, something that's going on or something that you can feel yourself being called into, that you're kind of just half-assing or just not showing up at all? Like, either you're not showing up at all, you're just half-assing, going through the motions. So we'll just take a moment and see what comes to you, um, about that aspect of your life right now. Great. And just notice how you're orienting to that given where you're at right now, like changing nothing, how your unconscious patterns would be of how you would approach what you're going to do with your energy and your life, how that half-assing or not showing up fully shows up for you.
And how that might feel in your body
Hmm.
in this present moment.
Hmm. Great. And then Felicia's going to take us of how to take it from a different point of view. Take us away, Felicia.
All right, so let's take a nice deep breath. Get nice and comfortable. Clear it all out. So inhale deeply into the lungs and just sigh a breath out on the exhale. When Devin was drawing us into that example of how you're experiencing in your life, why I brought up these sensations in your body is sometimes it can feel contractive in different areas. So let's breathe into that space in this moment. And then sigh it out. Notice how that feels. And for this exercise, for this moment, let's see yourself in a place where you're doing exactly what you want to do in the scenarios that came up for you, how you want to be, acting as though you're already achieving, you're already doing, you're already being in your expanded state, in your full greatness. Imagine how that feels in every cell of your body. Allow that to percolate through. Notice what areas in your body are feeling sensations. And notice maybe if your body language even changes a little bit. What I notice in this space is that my chest opens and moves forward, right? And I allow this deep sense of knowing from a place of everything will work out and everything has already worked out, right? And how does that feel to be now, if I make a mistake, right? It's like, oh, that was actually meant to happen. And it's leading me to this place of more greatness.
Mm-hmm.
So funny because I got exactly the same thing, like exactly one to one. And leading into it, the scenario that I got was a bit unexpected because it's about me writing my own book. And I actually took a couple of days off last week. We had a long weekend, and I went to my mother's house so I could retreat and write. And instead, I just worked on my YouTube, and the book did not come through like at all. And what's obvious to me is that like the book was still in hibernation. It was still sleeping. I was not meant to write, right? And my ego was like, yeah, but you were half-assing it. Like you didn't even really try, right? And so it's like I feel there's different levels to it because sometimes it's just not time, right? But today I got this huge spark of energy and this huge like on the outside also like a new publisher came into my sphere and somebody's interested in it and like there's like this huge energy surge that that just came in for it and I know now it's time to write again, right? So I feel there's different levels actually that I didn't think of before about half-assing something. Like we can make ourselves feel like we should, but that's not keeping us away from the joy. That's like an extra blockage when we connect to that should energy.
Mm-hmm.
But I love to see how I'm in that state and writing and it's just flowing and it's like it was so joyful and it was so fun and it was very, very expansive and heart opening. So thank you for leading us through that so beautifully, Felicia.
So welcome, Chris. What did you experience, Devin?
Yeah. So for me, it's a state of being, right? Being in that beingness of it's already happened, it's already here. It is my truth. It's literally me like existing in my cells as the truth of me. And it's a very expanded state of being to where it's actually like letting go into that, right? Like it just is. My truth is my like I like there's no point in resisting it. It just is, right? Like it's who I am. And so it's actually like a default underneath all of the muck and all of the noise and everything. And so coming into that space is basically coming out of the noise into that like true silent space of my soul that is who I am in my greatness when I show up for things is there's a real stillness and a real like you're saying, knowingness of who I am, what I'm here to do, and what my gifts are to be sharing and serving other people of coming home to themselves, right? And so it's a real essentially embodiment of it. Yeah.
What
And
came
what's
up for
coming
you?
forward for me right now is also to for the listeners who may struggle with getting into this space, also going back to the greatness episode.
Hmm.
Because as a listener, before I was invited to be part of this podcast as a listener in the greatness episode, I could fully just experience that and understand how to connect into that knowing and that being.
Hmm.
And for me, I think in our lives, we've all experienced that state of flow, that state of joyfulness, and that state of like abundance and connectedness and deep knowing and being. And it's allowing that space to come more forward more often.
Mm.
And really just sitting with that and being like, okay, if I could go through that exercise every day to start my morning, right? How different would my life be? I could even visualize every single aspect of my day, right? And see myself, oh, how would I act if I was in this space throughout the activities that are slated for my day? So that's
Mm.
what
Especially
I'm
maybe
excited
the
for.
ones where you're challenged, where you think, oh my God, this is going to be crap. Like, I don't even want to go there.
Especially in those ones, right?
Exactly. And
Especially,
then
yeah.
see that contrast of how would I naturally show up? What do I expect? And if I show up in my greatness, what would I expect? Right.
And that really speaks to the reason why we're doing this, because we were saying earlier of everything being in this unconscious things, is that our actions are actually more habitual and unconscious. And it's when we get the second mode of awareness and a higher mode of awareness, basically our greatness, when we see it from a different point of view, we have access to different actions, different points of view, different way of seeing things. And that's why we do that. Is it's one thing to know, oh, I have unconscious patterns that are holding me back, but it's like ask, okay, so what do you do with that? Is get a different
Mm.
point of view so you can see truth and be like, here's who you actually are. Here's how if you were to show up, what that looks like and what you would be doing, right?
Yeah.
And
And
it's really what
especially
we were saying about acting like it. Yeah,
I was
go
just
for it.
going to say, it's about doing that then, because if you are just aware of your patterns and you don't act differently, then nothing's going to change, right? Because
Yeah.
you still act according to the old pattern. So when you rise above and become aware, then you can choose and act on that.
Yeah.
And what I love about what Devin said earlier in terms of, oh, if joy feels not necessarily accessible,
Mm,
contentment, right?
mm,
It's the choice to upgrade your thoughts, even
mm,
incrementally. It
mm,
doesn't have to be a giant step like, okay, yep, I'm all of a sudden in my greatness when I was living in this
mm,
space, right? I'm like,
mm,
okay, what next step can I take? Okay.
mm,
Yeah, that feels okay. Right.
mm,
And as we do that, we're allowing more of that
mm,
um energy, that frequency
mm.
to come in.
And
Just
what's also really awesome about this approach is that it doesn't scare your ego, right? Because
Hmm.
if you take these little steps, these Fibonacci spiral little steps, your ego is like, oh, that's not so bad. I can do that. Oh, that's not so bad. I can do that. Whereas when you say, I jump from sadness to joy, your ego is like, yeah, not gonna happen.
not happening.
Yeah, we're not going
Well,
there.
yeah, it just really speaks to the progressive nature, right? And that how it makes it sustainable and allows us to grow into these versions of ourselves that are true, but allowing for the realness and this almost compassion for your ego to say like, look, I get that you're having a hissy fit. I get that this is challenging for you, and this is actually what I really do want. And so we're going to go along for the ride, but this is more of the sustainable nature of it. And I love that we're talking about this because I think in recent years, this has gotten a lot more publicity, a lot more podcasts on all of this. But I think a lot of people can get into that unrealistic expectation of like, oh, I'm just supposed to know who I am in this greatness and suddenly be this expanded, joyful being, beacon self. And it's like, That may not actually be true. I think that people actually are like, that can actually be a distorted thing to where you're just doing the opposite, right? Whereas
Mm,
there is a way to progressively allow yourself to expand into that version that you are, and allow things to ripple out from there. And that is more of the honestly truly genius and natural way that our greatness is going to guide us, what those steps are to allow it to be progressive and allow ourselves to lean into it more, you
mm.
know?
Yeah, it's like with positive affirmations when they are too high pitched and you're not pacing, you're not meeting yourself where you are, you're not pacing yourself, you're not going in that same speed, then it's like, yeah, you can work on it for years, but it's just like the distance is too long.
Yeah. So
Or
with
sometimes we
babies,
bypass the obstacles, right?
Mm,
Or those blocks, and we almost pretend that they're not there so that we
mm.
can
Jump. Mhm.
jump,
But they stay
mm,
right?
there.
And yes, the
They stay
obstacle is the
there
way,
and
right? Like
and they create.
they do create. And that's, I think, whether we're aware of it or not, we're always creating.
mhm.
Mm,
So this is the whole part, right? Like let's be conscious about what we're creating.
mm,
Exactly. Exactly. So along this theme and idea of just taking one step at a time is, what do you imagine if you just from this moment forward take the one step of acting more like that expanded being that expanded being just a little bit more today? What do you imagine the ripple effects in your life being if you were to fully show up like that? Even if just like for a day. Like honestly, we would love for you to lean into that more, but it's almost like I can hear somebody being like, I don't know about this, but it's like try it on for size, right? Like you don't know until you play with it, until you like, okay, let me today like pretend that I'm gonna be, even if it's like for freaking pretend, to be like, let me check out this theory, right?
mm,
But you got to try something different to get different results. And if you're struggling with leaning into joy, contentment, and any of the higher experiences, what do you got to lose? What do you got to
mm.
lose to just give it a shot and see what those ripple effects are? But for right now, I just imagine what that could be like. Imagine if you showed up as that for the rest of your day. Probably can already, I mean, for myself, I can experience more expansion already. The day hasn't even
Mm,
begun, but like I can feel that the day is going to be more expansive if I lean into that more.
mm.
Yeah.
I just had an
Mhm.
experience with a client of mine where the action step that came up in the session was for her to connect with people on the street and just have a super short eye contact and just send them like wish them a magical day, like a magical synchronistic experience or something beautiful. And because that comes through her, like that changes her experience, but that definitely changes the other person's experience. So it's like, you know a ping pong effect, and it's like it's nothing, right? You do nothing, there is no big investment, it's no time, and the ripple effects are awesome. So yeah, maybe you can just do that.
I love that.
I do love that. And it's funny, I had this thing come up. Oh, what I was going to say earlier is when I'm what Devin was speaking about, like, okay, what if we just did that for today? And immediately my system was like,
Yeah.
like that inner calm, that inner peace that Chris mentioned. It was just like, oh yeah, that feels so nice, soft. I love the word compassion for your ego. It's not
Mm,
like us against the ego.
Mm-mm. Ever.
And that sometimes feels hard, like, oh, why am I back here? Right. But it's like,
Mm,
ah, okay. No, no. We're working together. We're creating new realities all the time.
mm.
mhm,
Yeah, I just had this image, and I think that could be a future episode, the other day, where I realized that we have the ego to create tension. Like it's collecting energy like a magnet through the crap that we go through the lower level experiences we have. It attracts energy, and that is creative energy. If we know how to channel it towards something we love, that is like we need the ego to collect that energy so we can create something, right? And so it's really definitely not us against the ego, it's us with the ego.
mhm. Yeah. So with that, we invite you to look at it from that point of view. It's not here to fight your ego or say you shouldn't be doing that, but to get that other perspective, be like, hey, so what's another way of being? What's another way of looking at it? And then what are the ripple effects when you show up like that?
Mm.
So we invite you to lean into that and give yourself this gift. And then, as always, we love to hear from you. So if you want to share that experience in our comments or at journeyofyoupodcast@gmail.com, we'd love to hear from you. We've been getting fabulous comments and some 5-star reviews. We're going to have one of those other greatness readings coming up here shortly. But what a great episode, you guys. What a great
Mhm.
episode, huh?
Super fun. So happy you're on board, Felicia.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm so
Feels like
happy to
a
be
massive
invited into
gift.
this.
Yeah.
Capacity expanding already.
Yay.
Uh-huh. Yay. So
Jackpot
with
filling.
that, as we be in our expanded selves together, we invite the same for you. And until next time, everybody, here's to your joy.
Bye.
Bye.